Hare Krishna. We are live. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam for the Independently Thoughtful. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You want me to do the screen share? Which verse is it? I can't hear you. You're muted.
777.
Oh. So here we're speaking about Kayadhu, and the demigods are becoming scared about who is in the womb, and now we'll see how Nārada Muni is going to save her. Niyamanam bhayodvignam rudantim kurarim iva yadrichayat gatastatra devarshir dadrishe pati. As she was being led away, crying in fear, like a kurari captured by a vulture, the great sage Nārada, who at that time had no engagement, appeared on the scene and saw her in that condition. Why it says he had no engagement?
Means free from all duties, is free from all material obligation. So what is the
Yadrichaya, by chance.
Yeah, by his own will, by chance. In other words, he was not obliged by anything.
Prahanainam surapate netum arhasyang anagasam muncha mahabhaga satim para parigraham. Nārada Muni said, O Indra, king of the demigods, this woman is certainly sinless. You should not drag her off in this merciless way. O greatly fortunate one, this chaste woman is the wife of another. You must immediately release her. Shri Indra Vacha Astesya Jatare Viryam Avisahyam Suradvishaha Asyatam Yavat Prasavam Moksherata Padavim Gataha. King Indra said, in the womb of this woman, the wife of the demon Hiranyakashipu, is the seed of that great demon. Therefore, let her remain in our custody until her child is delivered, and then we shall release her. Purport. Indra, the king of heaven, decided to arrest Prahlāda Maharaj's mother because he thought that another demon, another Hiranyakashipu, was within her womb. The best course, he thought, was to kill the child when the child was born, and then the woman could be released. I have a question. Even though some people like Indra are devotees and they believe in Vishnu as the supreme, why oftentimes we see Indra has so much fear about position or about fears like that? And why even sometimes even amongst devotees we don't have so much faith, and we are so much after maybe power or position or influence, and not really confident and secure that Krishna will protect us, take care of us. Why we so much endeavor to keep our image or whatever?
Well, there are several questions into one, but the basic thing is that unless one has as a great faith or as a higher taste, then they had to look for something lower. So if one doesn't have a great taste in the Bhagavatam, in the holy name, in the association of the body, then we have to have some source of pleasure. So it's either sinful activity and or position, prestige, like this, a social influence. We cannot be desireless. So if we don't have spiritual desires developed, then we have material desires.
Recently I heard like one of your colleague, somebody invited every Tom, Dick and Harry, or not like Tom, Dick and Harry, but politically this, that, but you have worked with this person for a long time on important projects, and then I know that you were not even invited, we were not even invited. And then that made me feel a little like, like not included, not welcome, like this. I know you don't care so much about it, but I was just thinking about, I don't want to judge these devotees as materialistic, or they only want people in power and position, and because you're not, they didn't invite you or whatever. I don't want to judge them. I don't know their intention. Krishna knows. At the same time, I was just wondering, how do I make peace with the fact that there are some people who are just, they want superficial social connections for political purposes, and they don't actually want relationships? Is it bad to feel somewhat superior? Like you said, maybe they don't have that value system that, even if somebody's not in a power or position, you have worked with that person, they're friends, but still, like, how do I take this situation in a more sattva-guna way without feeling superior and without feeling inferior?
Well, everybody has got their own obstacles. It's not like we are pure or anything like that. So some people have certain challenges and we have other challenges. So, somebody should think of working on their own hearts and their own attachments without bothering too much about other people's attachment, unless really that kind of affects us. But if it doesn't affect us particularly, who cares? Unless we are not the spiritual masters, and everybody has got their limits. We have our limits, and we should work on those.
But what I'm asking is, like, Indra has this kind of fears,
Okay.
and still he's a great devotee, right?
Well, a great devotee. I mean, the Bhagavatam, he doesn't come through as such a great devotee. He makes so many mistakes. He offends the Guru Brihaspati. He ends up killing the Brahmana, Vishwarupa. He wants to kill everybody in Vrindavan because of being disrespected. He wants, in the Bhagavatam, he is almost a villain. He steals the horse of Maharaj Prithu. And so it's like, it's not really a hero in the Bhagavatam, at least, and maybe in the Vedas, so some other scriptures, but in the Bhagavatam, he doesn't come through as a great devotee. Of course, the Lord protects him, meaning He's in charge, he's got that post, does that service, so Narayana Vishnu keeps him there. But it's not like an example of pure devotion. Prahlāda Nārada is an example of pure devotion, not Indra.
How did he become Indra then if he has so much insecurity and passion? I thought to become king of heaven, one needs to be very sattvic or...
Well, the point is that somebody may have insecurity when has something to lose. When he's trying to become Indra, when he's doing all the yagyas, when he's doing all the pious activity, the tapasya, that's more like, okay, he's going up materially, socially, the universal sphere, and he may not have that, insecurity. So, but then when he has the power, then he may fear losing it.
All right. Shri Nārada Uvacha Ayam Nishkilbisha Sakshan Mahabhagavato Mahan Tvaya na prapsyate samstam Anantanucharo Bali. Narad Muni replied, the child within this woman's womb is faultless and sinless. Indeed, he is a devotee. He is a great devotee, a powerful servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you will not be able to kill him. Purport. There have been many instances in which demons or non-devotees have attempted to kill a devotee, but they have never been able to destroy a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord promises in Bhagavad Gita 9:31, Kaunteya pratijanehi na me bhakta pranashati. This is a declaration by the Supreme Personality of Godhead that his devotee cannot be killed by demons. Prahlāda Maharaj is the vivid example of the truth of this promise. Narad Muni told the king of heaven, it would be impossible for you to kill the child, even though you are demigods, and certainly it would be impossible for others. Iti yuktastam vihayendro devarshirmanayam vacha ananta priya bhaktainam parikramya divam yayo. When the great saint Narad Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released my mother. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the demigods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. Purport. Although King Indra and the other demigods are exalted personalities, they were so obedient to Narad Muni that King Indra immediately accepted Narad Muni's words concerning Prahlāda Maharaj. This is called understanding by the parampara system. Indra and the demigods did not know that a great devotee was in the womb of Kayadhu, the wife of Hiranyakashipu, but they accepted the authoritative statements of Narad Muni and immediately offered their respects to the devotee by circumambulating the woman in whose womb he was living. To understand God and the devotee by the parampara system is the process of knowledge. There's no need to speculate about God and his devotee. One should accept the statements of a bona fide devotee and thus try to understand. Tato me mataram rishi samaniya nijashrame ashvasye hosyatam vatse yavatte bharturagama. Prahlāda Maharaj continued. The great saint Narad Muni brought my mother to his ashram and assured her of all protection, saying, my dear child, please remain at my ashram until the arrival of your husband. Tatetyavat siddhe varsher antike sakuto bhayan yavad daitya patir ghorat tapasonanyavartata. After accepting the instructions of Devarshi Nārada, my mother stayed in his care without fear from any direction, as long as my father, king of the Daityas, had not become free from his severe austerities. Rishim paryacharat tatra bhaktya paramaya sati antarvatni svagarbhasya kshemayeccha prasutaye. My mother, being pregnant, desired the safety of her embryo and desired to give birth after her husband's arrival. Thus, she stayed at Narad Muni's ashram, where she rendered service unto Narad Muni with great devotion. Purport. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 9:19-17. Matra swasrar duhitra va naviviksano bhavet balavan indriya gramo vidvamsam api karshati. One should not remain in a secluded place with a woman, even one's mother, sister, or daughter. Nonetheless, although one is strictly prohibited from staying with a woman in a secluded place, Narad Muni gave shelter to Prahlāda Maharaj's young mother, who rendered service to him with great devotion and faith. Does this mean that Narad Muni transgressed the Vedic injunctions? Certainly he did not. Such injunctions are intended for mundane creatures, but Narad Muni is transcendental to mundane creatures, mundane categories. Narad Muni is a great saint and is transcendently situated. Therefore, although he was a young man, he could give shelter to a young woman and accept her service. Haridas Thakur also spoke with a young woman, a prostitute, in the dead of night, but the woman could not deviate his mind. Instead, she became a Vaishnavi, a pure devotee, by the benediction of Haridas Thakur. Ordinary persons, however, should not imitate such highly elevated devotees. Ordinary persons must strictly observe the rules and regulations by staying aloof from the association of women. No one should imitate Narad Muni or Haridas Thakur. It is said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vignena Bhujya. Even if a man is very advanced in learning, he cannot understand the behavior of a Vaishnava. Anyone can take shelter of a pure Vaishnava without fear. Therefore, in the previous verse, it has been distinctly said, Devarsher Antika Sakuto Bhaya. Kayadhu, the mother of Prahlāda Maharaj, stayed under the protection of Narad Muni without fear from any direction. Similarly, Narad Muni, in his transcendental position, stayed with the young woman without fear of deviation. Narad Muni, Haridas Thakur, and similar acharyas, especially empowered to broadcast the glories of the Lord, cannot be brought down to the material platform. Therefore, one is strictly forbidden to think that acharya is an ordinary human being. Guru Shu Naramati. Any comments?
Well, I mean, Srila Prabhupada explained it in a certain way. My question comes to mind is that in the ashram Narada Muni, Narada Muni, he was alone in the ashram. I mean, that's not, at least from the Bhagavatam, it's not clear. Of course, Srila Prabhupada makes this point that certainly transcendental people, Haridas Thakur, Narada Muni, it did not mention Ramananda Roy also as the same category. So at the same time, the question comes to mind: is the ashram like what was only Narada Muni in the ashram? There was no other people, or so how alone were there? But anyway, Srila Prabhupada makes obviously an important point. One should not imitate this type of things. It's just like one should not imitate Shiva drinking poison.
Hmm.
Yeah.
ऋषि करुणिकास्तस्या प्रादत् उभयम् ईश्वरा धर्मस्य तत्त्वं ज्ञानं च माम् अप्युद्दिश्य निर्मलम्. Narad Muni delivered his instructions both to me, who was within the womb, and to my mother, who was engaged in rendering him service. Because he is naturally extremely kind to the fallen souls, being in a transcendental position, he gave instructions on religion and transcendental knowledge. These instructions were free from all material contamination. Purport. Here it is said, Dharmasya tattvam jnanam cha nirmalam. The word Nirmalam refers to spotless dharma, spotless religion, or in other words, Bhagavad Dharma. Ordinary ritualistic activities consist contaminated religion, by which one benefits by developing material wealth and prosperity. But uncontaminated, pure religion consists of understanding one's relationship with God and acting accordingly, thus fulfilling the highest mission of life and returning home back to Godhead. Why does it say contaminated religion?
Because it's motivated by material desire, selfish desire. Why one does those things? Because he wants better enjoyment in this world. It's just sense gratification, but in a more sophisticated Vedic way. So it's an ordinary ritualistic activity. Obviously, like when Prithu Maharaj was doing his yagya, he was doing out of duty because that's what the king does. But most of, that's why I say ordinary ritualistic activity. Why one does that? To either to become Indra, to become in Svargaloka, to go to believe in Svargaloka, or to get more power. So it's contaminated. It's not pure. It's not pure desire. Pure desire means with love or out of duty, at least out of duty, to please Guru, please Krishna, because it's an order. But generally, people want something out of the religious activity.
Prahlāda Maharaj advised that one elevate oneself to the standard of Bhagavad Dharma from the very beginning of life. Kaumara acharayet prajño dharmam bhagavataniha. The Lord himself also speaks of pure, uncontaminated religion when he says, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 1866. One must understand one's relationship with God and then act accordingly. This is Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma means Bhakti Yoga. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyasu Vairagyam Jnanam cha Yad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Bhagavad Gita 1, Bhagavatam 127. To be situated on the platform of pure religion, one must perform Bhakti Yoga in relationship with Krishna, Vasudeva. Tattu kalasya dhirgatvat strivan matu stiro dade rishanugrahitam mam nadhuna pyajata smriti. Because of the long duration of time that has passed and because of her being a woman and therefore less intelligent, my mother has forgotten all those instructions. But the great sage Nārada blessed me and therefore I could not forget them. It doesn't say less intelligent anywhere in the verse. It just says stritvat because of being a woman.
Well, the purport Srila Prabhupada elaborates. Yeah, but it's a fact. It says Stritvan, but Stritvan because of being a woman. So.
Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 9:32, the Lord says, Mam hi partha vyavashritya ye pishru papa yonaya striyo vaishyastata sudra astepyante paramgatim. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they are low-born women, vaishyas, merchants, or shudras, workers, can approach the supreme destination. The word papa yoni refers to those who are less than shudras, but even though a woman may not be papa yoni because of being less intelligent, she sometimes forgets devotional instructions. For those who are strong enough, however, there's no question of forgetting. Women are generally attached to material enjoyment, and because of this tendency, they sometimes forget devotional instructions. But if a woman practices devotional service strictly according to the rules and regulations, a system by the Lord himself that she can... The statement by the Lord himself that she can return to Godhead. Te pyanti paramgatim. It's not at all astonishing. One must take shelter of the Lord and rigidly follow the rules and regulations. Then regardless of what one is, one will return home back to Godhead. Prahlāda Maharaj's mother was more concerned with protecting the child in the womb and was very anxious to see her husband return. Therefore, she could not consider very seriously the sublime instructions of Nārada Muni.
Yeah, we reported this also in that book for training, for premarital training. So in this case, I mean, her mind was disturbed. So she, she didn't choose, okay, I want to go live in Nārada ashram and learn philosophy. It was more a circumstantial thing. She wanted to protect the child. She was waiting for her husband. She happened to be in the ashram and she was happy. But, you know, a lot of what one learns is depending on the motivation, how much he's eager to learn, how much he chose to learn. If somebody, it's like some people sits in the box in class and just sleep, how much they learn. How much they learn, but somebody you can see they're really taking notes, asking questions, because obviously, so apparently here, she was not like the best disciple, or the best student, or the best learner. So
भवतामपि भूयानां भवतामपि भूयन्मे यदि श्रद्धा दतेव च वै सारथिः श्रद्धाता स्त्रीबलानां च मे यथा. Prahlāda Maharaj continued, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith, you can also understand transcendental knowledge, just like me, although you're small children. Similarly, a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is spirit and what is matter. These words of Prahlāda Maharaj are very important in regard to knowledge descending by the disciplic succession. Even when Prahlāda Maharaj was baby within the womb of his mother, he became fully convinced of the existence of the supreme power because of hearing the powerful instructions of Nārada, and understood how to attain perfection in life by bhakti yoga. These are the most important understandings in spiritual knowledge. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata guru tasya te kartita hyartha prakashante mahatmanaha. And to those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Shweta Swatara Upanishad 623. अतः श्री कृष्ण नामादि न भवेत् ग्रह्यमिन्द्रियैः सेवोन्मुखे हि जीवादौ स्वयमेव स्फुरात् यदा. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1-234. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyasmi tattvata tato mam tattvato jnatva vishaye tat anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Bhagavatam 18:55. These are Vedic instructions. One must have full faith in the words of the spiritual master and similar faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the real knowledge of Atma and Paramatma and the distinction between matter and spirit will be automatically revealed. This Atma Tattva or spiritual knowledge will be revealed within the core of a devotee's heart because of having taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mahajans such as Prahlāda Maharaj. In this verse, the word bhuyat may be understood to mean let there be. Prahlāda Maharaj offers his blessings to his class friends, saying, also become faithful like me, become bona fide Vaishnavas. A devotee of the Lord desires for everyone to take to Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, however, some people do not have strong faith in the words of the spiritual master who comes from the disciplic succession, and therefore they are unable to understand transcendental knowledge. The spiritual master must be in line of authorized disciplic succession, like Prahlāda Maharaj, who received the knowledge from Nārada. If the class friends of Prahlāda Maharaj, the sons of the demon, were to accept the truth through Prahlāda, they would certainly also become fully aware of transcendental knowledge. The word Vaisharadhi, Vaisharadhi. The words Vaisharadhi refer to intelligence concerning the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely expert. The Lord has created wonderful universes by his expert knowledge. Unless one is expert, he cannot understand the expert management of the supreme expert. One can understand, however, if one is fortunate enough to meet a bona fide spiritual master coming in the disciplic succession from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Mother Lakshmi, or the Kumaras. These four sampradayas or disciplic successions of knowledge and transcendence are called the Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, and Kumar Sampradaya. Sampradaya vihina ye mantraste nishphalamata. The knowledge of the Supreme received from such sampradaya or disciplic succession can give one enlightenment. I was about to say entitlement. Enlightenment. If one does not take to the path of disciplic succession, it is not possible for one to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one understands the Supreme Lord through devotional service with the faith in the disciplic succession, and then advances further, he awakens his natural love for God, and then his life is success in life is assured. Would you like to continue?
Continue reading. Jamadhyasadi me bhava drishtadihasya natmana phalanam eva vrakshasya kalineshvara murtina. Just as the fruits and flowers of a tree in due course of time undergo 6 changes, birth, existence, growth, transformation, dwindling, and then death. Material body, which is obtained by the spirit soul under different circumstances, undergoes similar changes. However, there are no such changes for the spirit soul. Purport Srila Prabhupada, this is a very important verse in understanding the difference between the spiritual soul and the material body. The soul is eternal. It's in Bhagavad Gita 2:20. Jayate mriyate vakadachim nayam bhutvam visvamanavyo janitya shashvatuyam purano ahnyate hanyane sharire. For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been, has he ever ceased to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Spirit soul is eternal, being freed from waste and change, which take place because of the material body. The example of a tree and its fruits and flowers is very simple and clear. A tree stands for many, many years, but with the seasonal changes, its fruits and flowers undergo 6 transformations. The foolish theory of modern chemists that life can be produced by chemical interactions cannot be accepted as truth. The birth of human being material body takes place through a mixture of the ovum and semen. But the history of birth is that although the ovum and semen mix together after sex, there is not always pregnancy. Unless the soul enters the mixture, there is no possibility of pregnancy. When the soul takes shelter of the mixture, the body takes birth, exists, grows, transforms, and dwindles. And ultimately, it is vanquished. The fruits and flowers of a tree seasonally come and go, but the tree continues to stand. Similarly, the transmigrating soul accepts various bodies, which undergo 6 transformations. But the soul remains permanently the same. The soul is eternal, ever existing, but the body is accepted by the soul or changed. There are 2 kinds of soul: Supreme Soul, Personality of God, and the individual soul, the living entity. As various body changes take place in the individual soul, different millenniums of creation take place in the Supreme Soul. In this regard, Madhvacharya say, Shadvikara Sharirasya Na Vishnu Stadgatasya Cha Tadhadinam Sariram Shagatvatam Mamatam Tijit. Since the body is the external feature of the soul is not dependent on the body. Rather, the body is dependent on the soul. One who understands this truth should not be very much anxious about the maintenance of his body. There is no possibility of maintaining the body permanently or eternally. Antavanta medeha nityasyakta saririna is the statement of Bhagavad Gita 2:18. Material body is antavat, perishable. but the soul within the body is eternal. Nityasyukta sharirinaha. Lord Vishnu and the individual soul were part and parcel of him are both eternal. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. Lord Vishnu is the chief living being, whereas the individual living entities are parts of Lord Vishnu. All the various grades of bodies, from the gigantic universal body to the small body of an ant, are perishable. But the super soul and the soul, being equal in quality, both exist eternally. This is further explained in the next verses. Atma nityo vyayah shuddha eka kshitragya ashrayah avikriya svadraghetur vyapako sang anavrata etardhad shabhir vidvan atmano lakshanay paray aham mametya sadbhavam dehado mohajam tejit. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from deterioration and free from material contamination. They are individual. They are the knowers of the external body, and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change. They are self-illuminated. They are the cause of all causes, and they are all-pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body, and therefore they are always uncovered. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life, in which one thinks, I am this material body, everything in relation with this body is mine. Or Prabhupada Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita 15:7, Lord Krishna clearly says, Mamavan Sajiva Loka Jiva Bhuta. All the living entities are parts of me. Therefore, the living entities are qualitatively the same as the Supreme Personality of God, who is the leader, the supreme among all the living entities. In the Vedas, it said, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. The Lord is the chief individual living entity, the leader of the subordinate living entities. Because the living entities are parts or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. Living entities have the same quality as the Lord, just as a drop of seawater is composed of the same chemicals as the great sea itself. Thus, there is oneness in quality, but difference in quantity. One can understand the Supreme Personality of God by understanding the sample, the living entity, because all the qualities of God exist in a minute quantity in the living entities. There is oneness, but God is great, where the living entities are extremely small. Anoraniyam mato maniyam mahiyam. Katha Upanishad 1:20, the living entities are smaller than the atom, but God is greater than the greatest. Our conception of greatness may be represented by the sky, because we think of the sky as being unlimitedly big, but God is bigger than the sky. Similarly, we have knowledge. The living entities are smaller than atoms, being 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. Yet the quality of being the supreme cause of all causes exists in the living entity, as well as in the Supreme Personality of God. Indeed, it is due to the presence of the living entity that the body exists and bodily changes take place. It is because the Supreme Lord is within the universe that the changes dictated by the material laws occur. The word Eka, meaning individual, is significant, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 9:4, Matstani Sarvabhutani Achaham Tishavastita. Everything material, spiritual, including earth, water, fire, sky, and the living entities, exists on the platform of Spirit Soul. Though everything is an emanation from the Supreme Personality of God, one should not think that the Supreme Lord is dependent upon anything else. Both God and the living entity are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Yasmin Dhyau Priti Yasmin Dhyahu Priti Chantariksham Vigyataram Hadikena Vijaniyat Ekam Evadvitiyam Atmajyotihi Samradhyovacha Sahimam Lokamashrijatah Satyam Jnanam Anantam Asango Yam Purusha Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishate. All these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great and the other is small, but both of them are the cause of all causes. The corporally limited and the universally unlimited. You should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. The intelligence called Avishuddha Buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the Supreme Cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto him, Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samatma Sudurlabha. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relation with God, knowing that God is great, Vibhu, whereas the living entity is small, Anu is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is in the material body and that everything in relation to with the material body belongs to him. This is called aham mama, janasya moyam, aham mameti. This is illusion. One must give up his illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. Okay. Varnamyatagrabasuhe makara kshitreshu yoga istadabhigya apnuyat kshitreshu deheshu tatatma yoga adhyatmavid brahma gatim labeta. An expert geologist can understand where there is gold, and by various processes can extract it from the gold ore. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body, and thus by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, as one who is not expert cannot understand where there is gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. Purport. Here is a very good example concerning spiritual understanding. Foolish rascals, including so-called Gyanis, philosophers, and scientists, cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body because they are lacking spiritual knowledge. The Vedas enjoy Tadvigyanartham Saguru Eva Vigachit. To understand spiritual knowledge, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one has been trained in geology, one cannot detect gold in stone. Similarly, unless one has been trained by a spiritual master, he cannot understand what is spirit and what is matter. Here it is said, Yogaistadabhigya. This indicates that one who has connected himself with spiritual knowledge can understand that there is a spiritual soul within the body. However, one who is in an animalistic conception of life and no spiritual culture cannot understand. As an expert mineralogist or geologist can understand where there's gold and can then invest his money to dig there and chemically separate the gold from the ore. An expert spiritualist can understand where the soul is within matter. One who has not been trained cannot distinguish between gold and stone. Similarly, fools and rascals who have not learned from an expert spiritual master what is soul and what is matter cannot understand the existence of the soul in the body. To understand such knowledge, one must be trained in the mystic yoga system, or finally in the bhakti yoga system. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhakti Mam Vijanati. Unless one takes shelter of the bhakti yoga process, one cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita begins by teaching Deinasmin yatare kumaram nivanam jara Dadyantara pratirdirastatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body of death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Bhagavad Gita 2:13. Thus, the first instruction is that one should understand the soul is within the body and is transmigrated from one body to another. This is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Any person who is not expert in understanding this science or is unwilling to understand it remains in the body conceptual life or the animalistic conceptual life, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke saiva gukaraha. Every member of human society should clearly understand the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, for only in this way can one be spiritually elevated and automatically give up the false illusory knowledge by which one thinks, I'm this body and everything belonging to this body is mine. I'm mameti. This doggish conception should be rejected immediately. One should be prepared to understand the spirit soul and the Supreme Spirit God who are eternally related. Thus one may return home back to God and having solved all the problems of life. Do you want to read? Do you want to read or not?
Yeah. Where did you stop? Sorry.
At the end of the verse. So we start with 22.
Oh, no, it's taking so much time to move on. Okay. Astu prakritaya prokta eva hi tadguna vikara shodashacharyai human eka samanvayat. The Lord's 8 separated material energies, the 3 modes of material nature, and the 16 transformations, the 11 senses, and the 5 gross material elements like earth and water. Within all these, the one spiritual soul exists as the observer. Therefore, all the great acharyas have concluded that the individual soul is conditioned by these material elements. Purport. As explained in the previous verse, kshetreshu deheshu tathatma yogair adhyatma vid brahma gatim labhet. Abhita. A spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body, and thus by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. The intelligent person who is expert in finding the self within the body must understand the 8 external energies which are listed in Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Bhumirapo nalo vayu khammano buddhireva cha ahankara ityame bhinna prakriti ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All together, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. Bhumi, earth, includes all the objects of sense perception. Rupa, form. Rasa, taste, gandha, smell, shabdha, sound, and sparsha, touch. Within the earth are the fragrances of rose, the taste of sweet fruit, and whatever else we want. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.10.4, Sarvakama Dhugha Mahi, the earth, Mahi, contains all our requirements. Thus, the object of sense perception are all present in the Bhumi, or earth. The gross material elements and subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and Hankara, false ego, constitute the total material energy. Within the total material energy are the three material modes or qualities. These qualities, Sattva Gun, Rajagun, and Tamagun, belong not to the soul but to the material energy. It is because of the interaction of these three material modes of nature that the five knowledge-gathering senses, the five working senses, and their controller, the mind, are manifested. Then, according to these modes, the living entity gets the opportunity to perform different types of karma with different types of knowledge, thinking, feeling, and willing. Thus, the bodily machine begins to work. This has all been properly analyzed in Samkhya Yoga by the great acharyas, especially by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in his incarnation as Devahuti Putra Kapila. Thus, this is indicated here by the word Acharyai. We need not follow anyone who is not authorized Acharya. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One can understand the truth fully when he has taken shelter of an expert Acharya. The living entity is individual, but the body is composition of many material elements. This is proved by the fact that as soon as living entity quits this combination of material elements, it becomes a mere conglomeration of matter. The matter is qualitatively one, and the spiritual soul is qualitatively one with the Supreme. The Supreme is one, and the individual soul is one. But the individual soul is understood to be master of the individual combination of material energy, whereas the Supreme Lord is the controller of the total material energy. The living entity is the master of his particular body, and according to his activities, he is subjected to different types of pains and pleasure. However, although the Supreme Person, the Paramatma, is also one, he is present as an individual in all the different bodies. The material energy is in fact divided into 24 elements. The individual soul, the owner of the individual body, is a 25th subject, and above everything is Lord Vishnu as Paramatma, the Supreme Controller, who is a 26th subject. When one understands all of these 26 subjects, he becomes Adhyatmavit, an expert in understanding the distinction between matter and spirit. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 13.3, Kshetra Kshetrajnayor Jnanam, understanding of the kshetra, the constitution of the body, and of the individual soul and the super soul constitute real jnana or knowledge. Unless one ultimately understands that the Supreme Lord is eternally related with the individual soul, one's knowledge is imperfect. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Everything material and spiritual consists of various energies of Vasudeva, to whom the individual soul, the spiritual part of the Supreme Lord, is subordinate. Upon understanding this perfect knowledge, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. Dehastu sarva sanghato jagattastur iti dvida atraiva mrigya purusha neti netyajan. There are two kinds of bodies for every individual soul. A gross body made of 5 gross elements, and a subtle body made of 3 subtle elements. Within these bodies, however, is the spirit soul. One must find the soul by analyzing, saying, this is not it. This is not it. Thus, one must separate spirit from matter. As previously stated, Swarnam yatha gravasu hemakara kshetreshu yogais tad abhignya apnuyat. An expert in the study of the soil can find out where gold is and then dig there. He can then analyze the stone and test the gold with nitric acid. Similarly, one must analyze the whole body to find within the body the spirit soul. In studying one's own body, one must ask himself whether his head is his soul, his fingers are his soul, his hand is his soul, and so on. In this way, one must gradually reject all the material elements and the combination of material elements in the body. Then, if one is expert and follows the Acharya, he can understand that he is a spiritual soul living within the body. The greatest Acharya, Krishna, begins his teaching in Bhagavad Gita by saying, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Bhagavad Gita 2:13. The spirit soul possesses the body and is within the body. This is the real analysis. The soul never mixes with the bodily elements. Although the soul is within the body, it is separate and always pure. One must analyze and understand his self. This is self-realization. Neti neti is the analytical process of rejecting matter. By expertly conducting such an analysis, one can understand where the soul is. One who is not expert, however, cannot distinguish gold from earth, nor the soul from the body. Anvaya vyatirekena vivekeno satatatmana swargasthana samannayir vimrshadbhir ashashvatair. Sober and expert persons should search for the spirit soul with minds purified through analytical study in terms of soul's connection with and distinction from all things that undergo creation, maintenance, and destruction. Purport. A sober person can study himself and distinguish the soul from the body by analytical study. For example, when one considers his body, his head, his hands, and so on, one can certainly understand the difference between the spirit soul and the body. No one says, I head. Everyone says, my head. Thus, there are two entities, the head and I. They're not identical, although they appear to be one conglomeration. One may argue, when we analyze the body, we find a head, hands, leg, a belly, bones, urine, stool, and so on. But after everything is considered, where is the existence of the soul? The sober man, however, avails himself of this Vedic instruction. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayantya abhisam vishanti tad vijnana shashva tad brahmeti. Taittiriya Upanishad 3:1. Thus, he can understand that the head, hands, legs, and indeed the entire body have grown on the basis of the soul. If the soul is within the body, head, hands, and legs grow, but otherwise they do not. A dead child does not grow up, for the soul is not present. But if by a careful analysis of the body one still cannot find the existence of the soul, this is due to ignorance. How can a gross man fully engaged in materialistic activities understand the soul, which is a small particle of spirit, 1/10,000, the size of the tip of a hair? Such a person foolishly thinks that the material body has grown from a combination of chemicals, although he cannot find them. The Vedas inform us, however, that chemical combinations do not constitute the living force. The living force is the Atma and Paramatma, and the body grows on the basis of that living force. The fruit of a tree grows and undergoes 6 kinds of change because of the presence of the tree. If there were no tree, there could be no question of the growth and maturity of fruit. Therefore, beyond the existence of the body are Paramatma and Atma within the body. This is the first understanding of spiritual knowledge explained in Bhagavad Gita. Dehinosminyata dehe. The body exists because the presence of the Supreme Lord and the Jiva, which is a part of the Lord. This is further explained by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 9:4. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani na chaham teshva avastitha. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. The Supreme Soul exists everywhere. The Vedas enjoin sarvam khalvaidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman or an expansion of the Brahman's energies. Sutre manigana iva. Everything rests on the Lord, just like pearls strung together on a thread. The thread is a principal Brahman. He is the supreme cause, the supreme Lord upon whom everything rests. Matta parataram nanyat. Thus we must study the Atma and Paramatma, the individual soul and the super soul, upon whom the entire material cosmic manifestation rests. This is explained by the Vedic statement. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti. बुद्धेर्जागरणं स्वप्नां सुषुप्तिर् इति वृत्तया तयेनैवानुभूयन्ते सोऽध्यक्षा पुरुषः परा. In astrology, all this thing comes Jagrat planets, Swapna Avastha planets, Sushuptir planets. So every planet is either awake or dreaming or in sleep or in deep sleep. Let me just see what is Sushupti, Jagratam. I want to see how it is called, like when the planets are awake and sleeping. Here, Jagrat, Sushupti, that's the word. Right? Swapna, Sushupti, Jagrat. Swapna means dreaming. Okay. Intelligence can be perceived in 3 states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these 3 is to be considered the original master, the ruler, the supreme personality of Godhead. Without intelligence, one cannot understand the direct activities of the senses, nor can he understand dreaming or the cessation of all gross and subtle activities. The seer and controller is the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme soul, by whose direction the individual soul can understand when he is awake, when he is sleeping, and when he is completely in trance. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The living entities are completely absorbed in the 3 states of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep through their intelligence. This intelligence is supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accompanies the individual soul as a friend. Srila Madhvacharya says that living entity is sometimes described as Sattva Buddhi, when his intelligence acts directly to perceive pains and pleasures above activities. There is a dreaming state in which which understanding comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, is the supreme controller, and under his direction, the living entities are sub-controllers. One must understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead with one's intelligence. Would you like to read a little? Would you like to?
Ebistrivarnai paryastair buddhi bedai kriyodbhavai sarupmatmano buddhid ganda ervayum vayat. One can understand the presence of the air by the aroma it carries. So, under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of God, one can understand the living soul by these 3 divisions of intelligence. These 3 divisions, however, are not the soul. They are constituted of the 3 modes and are born of activities.
Do you want me to read?
Purple. As already explained, there are 3 states to our existence, namely wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In all 3 states, we have different experiences. As does the soul is the observer of these 3 states. Actually, the activities of the body are not the activities of the soul. The soul is different from the body, just as aromas are distinct from the material vehicle, which they are carried. Soul is unattached to material activities. This analysis can be considered by a person who is fully under the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed by the Vedic injunction, Yasmin vigyate sarvameva vigyatam bhavati. If one can understand a Supreme Personality of God, that one can automatically understand everything else. Because of not taking shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, Even great scholars, scientists, philosophers, and religionists are always Buddha. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.232. Yene Ravindraksha Vimuktamaninas Tvayashtabhavat Avishuddha Buddhaya. Even though one may artificially think himself liberated from material contamination, if he has not taken shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, his intelligence is polluted, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.42. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya paramana manasastu parabuddheryo buddhe paratastu sa. Above the senses, the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul. Ultimately, when one's intelligence becomes clear through devotional service, one is situated in Buddha Yoga. This also is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Dadami Buddha Yoga tam vienam upayanti te. When devotional service develops and one's intelligence becomes clear, one can use his intelligence to return home back to God. Etadvaro visamsaro gunakarma nibandhana jnana mulaparto pipum saspapna ivarpyate. Translation. Through polluted intelligence, one is subjected to the modes of nature. Thus one is conditioned by material existence. Like a dreaming state in which one falsely suffers, material existence, which is due to ignorance, must be considered unwanted and temporary. And wanted condition of temporary life is called ignorance. One can very easily understand the material body is temporary, for it is generated at a certain date and ends at a certain date. After undergoing the 6 kinds of change, namely birth, death, growth, maintenance, transformation, bringing. This condition of the eternal soul is due to its ignorance. Although it is temporary, it is unwanted. Because of ignorance, one is put into temporary bodies one after another. The spirit soul, however, does not need to enter such temporary bodies. It does so only due to his ignorance or his forgetfulness of Krishna. Therefore, in the human form of life, when one's intelligence is developed, one should change his consciousness by trying to understand Krishna. Then one can be liberated. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, where the Lord says, Jama karma chamedi vyam evam yoveti tatvata tyakta deham punarjama. Arjuna, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Unless one understands Krishna and comes to Krishna consciousness, one must continue in material bondage. To end this conditional life, one must surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indeed, that is demanded by the Supreme Lord. Sarva dharma parityaja, mamikam sharanam vraja. As advised by Maharishi Shabadeva, Nasadu Manyayat Atmano Yamasanapi Kresha Dasadaya, one must be intelligent enough to understand that although one's body is temporary, will not endure for long. As long as one has a body, must undergo the pangs of material existence. Therefore, if by good association, by the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master, one takes the Krishna consciousness, his conditional life of material existence is vanquished, and his original consciousness, known as Krishna consciousness, is revived. When one is Krishna conscious, he can realize that material existence, whether one is awake or dreaming, is nothing but a dream, has no factual value. This realization is possible by the grace of the Supreme Lord. This grace is also present in the form of the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is for everyone to engage in welfare activities to awaken the foolish living entity, especially human society, so that he may come to the platform of Krishna consciousness and benefit by liberation from conditional life. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya cites the following verses. Dukharupa samsaro buddhipurva mavapyate yata swapne shiraschedam swayam kritva manovashaha tato dukhama vapyeta tata jagarito pitu janan api atmano dukham avashastu pravartate. One must realize that the material condition of life is full of distresses. One can realize this with purified intelligence. Once intelligence purified, he can understand that unwanted temporary material life is just like a dream. Just as one suffers pain when his head is cut off in a dream, in ignorance one suffers not only while dreaming, but also while awake. Without the mercy of Supreme Personality of Godhead, one continues in ignorance and is thus subjected to material distresses in various ways. Tasma bhavadvi kartavya kartanam trigunatmanam bija niraranam yoga pravahu paramodhya. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of the demons, your duty is to take to Krishna consciousness, which can burn the seed of fruitive activities artificially created by the modes of material nature and stop the flow of the intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In other words, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, ignorance is immediately dissipated. Is confirmed by Bhagavad Gita. Mancha yoga vicharina bhakti yogina sevate sagunan samatiteta brahmavoya kapate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. By the practice of Bhakti Yoga, one immediately comes to the spiritual platform, transcendental to the actions and reaction of the three modes of material nature. The root of ignorance is material consciousness, which must be killed by spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. The word bija niraranam refers to burning the root cause of material life to ashes. The Medini dictionary, yoga is explained by its result. Yoga purvarta samprapto sangati dhyana yuktishu. When one is put into an awkward position because of ignorance, the process by which one can be freed from his entanglement is called yoga. This is also called liberation. Mukti itva anita rupam swarupena vivastiti. Mukti means giving up one's position in ignorance or illusion, by which one thinks in a way contrary to his constitutional position. Returning to one's constitutional position is called mukti, and the process by which one does this is called yoga. Thus, yoga is about karma, jnana, and sankhya. Indeed, yoga is the ultimate goal of life. Krishna, therefore, advised Arjuna to become a yogi. Tasma yogi bhavarjuna. Lord Krishna further advised in Bhagavad Gita that the first-class yogi is he who has come to the platform of devotional service. Yoginam api sarvisham madgate nantaratmana shuddhavam bhajati yo mam same yukta tamo mata. All yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Bhagavad Gita 6:47. Thus, one who always thinks of Krishna within the core of his heart is the best yogi. By practicing this best of all yoga systems, one is liberated from the material condition. Tatrupaya sahasranam ayam bhagavato ditat yadishvari bhagavati yatayar anjasarati. Or the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life, the one personally explained and accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be considered all perfect. That process is the performance of duty by which love for the Supreme Lord develops. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Among the linking processes elevate one from bondage to material contamination, the one recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be accepted as the best. The process is clearly explained in Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Sarva dharmam parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This process is the best because the Lord assures aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishini masucha. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. There's no need to be worried, for the Lord himself assures that he will care for his devotee and save him from the reactions of sinful activities. Material bondage is the result of sinful activity. Therefore, since the Lord assured he will dissipate the results of fruitive material activities, there is no need to be worried. This process of understanding one's position as a spirit soul, then engage oneself in devotional service is therefore the best. The entire Vedic program is based on this principle. And one can understand it as recommended in the Vedas. Yasya devi parabhakti yata devi tata guru siti yata prakashante mahatmana. You want to read?
Okay. And to those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Shvetasvatara Upanishad 6.23. One must accept the pure devotee, the representative of God, as one's guru, and then offer him all the respect one would offer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the secret of success. For one who adopts this method, the perfect process is revealed. In this verse, the word yair and how do you pronounce that? Anjasa?
Yairanjasa Ratihi.
Anjasa Ratihi indicate that by offering service and surrendering to the spiritual master, one is elevated to devotional service, and by performing devotional service, one gradually becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of this attachment to the Lord, one can understand the Lord. In other words, one can understand what the Lord's position is, what our position is, and what our relationship is. All this can be understood very easily by the simple method of Bhakti Yoga. As soon as one is situated on the platform of Bhakti Yoga, the root cause of one's suffering and material bondage is destroyed. This is clearly explained in the next verse, which gives the secret of success. Guru Shushrusaya Bhaktya Sarva Labdha Parena Cha Sangena Sadhu Bhaktanam Ishvararadhanena Cha Shraddhasya Tat Katayam Cha Kirtanair Gunakarmanam Tat Padam Buruho Dhyanat Tat Linge Ksharahana. One must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him, and with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master. And in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord with faith, glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on the lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastra and Guru. Purport. In the previous verse, it has been said that the process which immediately increases one's love and affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the best of the many of the thousands of ways to become free from entanglement of material existence. It is also said, Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhyam. Actually, the truth of religious principles is extremely confidential. Nonetheless, it can be understood very easily if one actually adopts the principles of religion. As it is said, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The process of religion is initiated by the Supreme Lord because he is the supreme authority. This is also indicated in the previous verse by the word bhagavatoditha. The injunctions or directions of the Lord are infallible, and their benefits are fully assured. According to his directions, which are explained in this verse, the perfect form of religion is Bhakti Yoga. To practice Bhakti Yoga, one must first accept a bona fide spiritual master. Bhakti rises. Guru Padashrayas Tasmat Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam Vishrambarena Guru Seva Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam Sadhu Dharma Pracha Bhoga Adityaga Krishnasya Hetave. One's first duty is to accept a bona fide spiritual master. The student or disciple should be very inquisitive. He should be eager to know the complete truth about eternal religion, Sanatana Dharma. The words Guru Sushrushraya means one should personally serve the spiritual master by giving him bodily comforts, helping him in bathing, dressing, sleeping, eating, and so on. This is called Guru Sushrushanam. A disciple should serve the spiritual master as a menial servant, and whatever he has in the position should be dedicated to the spiritual master. Pranair athair dhiya vacha. Everyone has life, his wealth, his intelligence, and his words, and all of them should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the spiritual master. Everything should be offered to the spiritual master as a matter of duty, but the offering should be made to the spiritual master with heart and soul, not artificially to gain material prestige. This offering is called arpana. Moreover, one should live among devotees, saintly persons, to learn the etiquette and proper behavior of devotion and service. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks in this connection that whatever is offered to the Supreme Master, spiritual master, should be offered with love and affection, not for material adoration. Simply, it is recommended that one associate with devotees, but there must be some discrimination. Although, actually, a sadhu, a saintly person, must be saintly in his behavior. Sadhava sadachara. Unless one adheres to the standard behavior, one's position as a sadhu, a saintly person, is not complete. Therefore, a Vaishnava, a sadhu, must completely adhere to the standards of behavior. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says that a Vaishnava, a person initiated into the Vaishnava cult, should be offered the respect befitting a Vaishnava, which means that he should be offered service and prayers. However, one should not associate with him if he is not a fit person with whom to associate. Hari sarveshu bhuteshu bhagavan asta ishvara iti bhutani manasa kamaistai sadhu manyate. One should always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his localized representation as the Paramatma, who is situated in the core of every living entity's heart. Thus, one should offer respect to every living entity according to that living entity's position or manifestation. Purport. Hari sarveshu bhuteshu. This statement is sometimes misunderstood by unscrupulous persons who wrongly conclude that because Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated in every living entity is therefore Hari. Such foolish persons do not distinguish between Atma and Paramatma, who are situated in every body. The Atma is a living entity and the Paramatma is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity, the individual living entity, however, is different from the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Hari Sarveshu Bhuteshu means that Hari is situated as Paramatma, not as Atma, although Atma is a part of Paramatma. Offering respects to every living entity means offering respect to the Paramatma situated in every living entity. One should not misunderstand every living entity to be Paramatma. Sometimes unscrupulous persons designate a living entity as Daridra Narayana, Swami Narayana, this Narayana or that Narayana. One should clearly understand that although Narayana is situated in the core of the heart of every living entity, the living entity never becomes Narayana. What is this thing Prabhupada often says about this Daridra Narayana concept?
Is this thing that somebody's answering?
No, I'm asking.
See, Daridra means poor. And so the Mayavadis, they say Daridra Narayana serve the poor because the poor is Narayana. And Srila Prabhupada often said, no, Narayana never becomes poor. So it's a contradictional term. Narayana means the shelter of everyone, is the husband of the goddess of fortune. He's the owner of everything. So how can he be Daridra Narayana? So it's a Mayavadi contamination. It's a Mayavadi stupid idea that they just say, oh, this is Narayana. Because in their idea, there is Brahman, then there is Narayana, which is an expression of Brahman in the mode of goodness. And then there's the Jivas, who are kind of part of Brahman, part of Narayana, in the sense that they are Narayana. They just forgot to be Narayana and they became poor Narayanas. So Srila Prabhupada very, very often attacks this idea because it's completely false. And it's also false what is built on this idea. Like people say, Manava Seva, Madhava Seva. It's all nonsense, actually. Manava Seva is Manava Seva. It's not Madhava Seva. It does not become Madhava Seva. These are all kind of
Speculations.
Speculation, play of words, because there is a rhyme. Manava Seva, Madhava Seva. People think, oh, yeah, it makes rhymes, so therefore must be true. It's not that.
Seve, Janardana Seve, they say in Kannada also.
What they say?
Jana Seve, Janardana Seve.
Yeah, it's just not true. It's just not true. It's just not true. So it's all Mayavada, because how can you compare serving? Say you give us piece of bread to a person. Okay, maybe good karma, but it's pious activity. But offering bread to Narayana is transcendental, is a karma. So it's a completely different categories of activity. People are ignorant, therefore they mix up everything.
एवं निर्जित सद्वर्गये क्रियते भक्तिरीश्वरे वासुदेवे भगवती यस्य संलभ्यते रति. By these activities, as mentioned above, one is able to cut down the influence of the enemies, namely lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy. And when thus situated, one can render service to the Lord. In this way, one surely attains the platform of loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. As mentioned in the verses 30 and 31, one's first duty is to approach the spiritual master, the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to begin rendering service to him. Prahlāda Maharaj proposed that from the very beginning of life, Kaumara Achara Prajna, a small child should be trained to serve the spiritual master while living at the Gurukula. Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanto Gururhitam, Bhagavatam 7:12:1. This is the beginning of spiritual life. Guru Padashraya Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam Sadharma Pracha. By following the instructions of the Guru and the Shastra, the disciple attains the stage of devotional service and becomes unattached to possessions. Whatever he possesses, he offers to the spiritual master, the Guru, who engages him in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. The disciple follows strictly, and in this way learns how to control his senses. Then, by using his pure intelligence, he gradually becomes a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Adhau Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha. In this way, one's life becomes perfect, and his attachment for Krishna becomes positively manifested. In this stage, he is situated in ecstasy, experiencing bhava and anubhava, as explained in the following verses. We have 2 minutes more. Should I read the next verse or should we do it tomorrow?
Oh, let's read.
I can finish.
Let's read.
Nishamya karmani gunana tulyan viryani leelatanubhi kritani yadati harshot pulakashru gadgadham pro Kanta udgayanti rautindriyati nityati. One who is situated in devotional service is certainly the controller of his senses, and thus he is a liberated person. When such a liberated person, the pure devotee, hears of the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord's incarnations for the performance of various pastimes, his hair stands on end on his body, tears fall from his eyes, and in his spiritual realization, his voice falters. Sometimes he openly dances, sometimes he sings loudly, and sometimes he cries. Thus he expresses his transcendental jubilation. The Lord's activities are uncommon. For example, when he appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he performed uncommon activities like bridging the ocean. Similarly, when Lord Krishna appears, he raised the Govardhan hill when he was only 7 years of age. These are uncommon activities. Fools and rascals who are not in the transcendental position consider these uncommon activities of the Lord to be mythological. But when the pure devotee, the liberated person, hears about these uncommon activities of the Lord, he immediately becomes ecstatic and exhibits the symptom of chanting, dancing, crying very loudly and jubilantly. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee.
Okay. So, should we close here?
Yeah. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवताम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल, हरि बोल.